I, very similarly to you, was starting to notice symptoms of burnout right before the pandemic. It was a really great first job in outpatient psychiatry. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
how old you are when you can retire. It matters what your financial situation is like. You need to actually take the time to look and assess where you're at currently.
Welcome back to the So You Want to Work in Healthcare podcast. I'm Leigha, a physician assistant who knows firsthand how burnout can push us to the edge. This season, we're doing things a little differently. I'll still be sitting down with incredible healthcare professionals to share their stories, but I'll also be bringing you more episodes where we get real about the challenges we face in medicine and how to start healing from our burnout. Together, we'll talk about what it actually takes to pause, reset, and rediscover the life you deserve in and out of scrubs. Welcome back to the So You Want to Work in Healthcare podcast. Today, I'm super excited to welcome our guest. Her name is Kat. She is the founder of PA the FI Way. She is also a Psych PA. And Kat, I'm so excited to have you today. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Leigha. I'm so excited to join you for the show. And we did a podcast swap, so I loved having you on my show as well. And I'm really excited to talk to you on your show here.
Thank you. Yes, I'm really interested in your career and what you're doing to help PAs with their finances and all that. So should we just get right into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I always like to start by asking my guests, why did you get into medicine? Like, what inspired you? And then also why you chose the career of physician associate over something like nursing or med school. So tell me what got you started and interested in medicine.
Yeah, great question. Growing up, I was definitely a huge science nerd. I loved learning all about biology and science and all those things. And then as a teenager, I tore my ACL my first and last time skiing. We live up in Minnesota, and my mom encouraged me to go on the ski trip with our youth group. She said, go have fun. And I was 13 or 14 at the time. And I said, well, I've never skied before. I'm probably going to be quite awful. And she said, no, go have fun with your friends. And of course, I tore my ACL because I did not know I needed to adjust my bindings when I got a different size boots, and unfortunately rolled down the hill, and you can imagine what happened. So that was not fun, but at the same time, it was through that experience that I met a PA for the first time. It was a PA in ortho that helped with my surgery and helped out with my ACL repair. With that experience, my mom in particular, but myself too, we tucked it in the back of our mind what the PA profession was. So when I got a little bit older, junior, senior in high school, thinking about what type of career in medicine I was pursuing, I knew that I wanted to be part of the care team, but have a little bit more responsibility, including diagnosing, prescribing, those types of things too. But I didn't want to spend the majority of my 20s, my younger years, in med school. And although I certainly had student loan debt, 6 figures of student loan debt, I did not want to go way, way, way into debt like a lot of our physician counterparts do. So that was part of the reason. But then once I learned that I could change specialties throughout my career, I was absolutely sold, because I love that idea that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, how do I know which specialty I for sure want to work in? And I just loved that flexibility about our profession.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's usually when somebody asks me why I wanted to be a PA, a lot of it was about the versatility and also the financial aspect of it. I think a lot of us, we're conditioned to not say like, I just didn't want to go to med school because it was too long. There's definitely some like there's reality is it's expensive. And there it's okay, I think, to like make a choice based on finances. Unfortunately, that's how it is in our country. It would be great if we could just all go to school for free and choose what we want to do that way. But yeah, I like what you said about that. And I love that your first experience with a PA was an ortho PA because, as you know, I'm an ortho girl. So that makes me super happy. But I'm sorry that you tore your ACL your first time skiing. Skiing is so fun, and I wish that didn't happen to you.
Yeah, my first and last time skiing. I still have not skied ever since, but now my favorite winter hobby is ice fishing. So I do that
Oh,
with my
cool.
husband and we love ice fishing. So it's okay because
Awesome.
now I have a different fun winter hobby that we do up here during our long winters.
Nice. I've never done it, but my fiance used to ice fish. He talks about it all the time. So
Oh, cool.
I don't know, maybe someday.
Yeah,
Seems
if you
cool.
guys ever find yourselves in Minnesota, we're happy to take you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. So tell me how you got into psych. Like, it doesn't seem to be a very common field for PAs. But yeah, just tell me your experience with that. Did you start in psych? Were you always interested in it? What was your story?
Yeah, really great question. And you're exactly correct that there are not many psych PAs out there. We are slowly growing. I had previously heard that roughly around 2% of PAs are psych PAs. And at the last conference that I was at, I heard that we're now 3% of PAs are
Yeah.
now psych PAs. So yay for growth. And we are
Nice.
absolutely looking to try to grow that a little bit further because PAs can really have a great role within the field of psychiatry. I did not start my PA career in psych. I actually started in family medicine, and I was in family medicine for about 6.5 years. I, very similarly to you, was starting to notice symptoms of burnout right before the pandemic. In 2019, which was only about 5 short years of practicing as a PA, I was starting to feel like I was dragging day to day. And how in the world am I going to do this work until my 60s? And just thinking it wasn't sustainable. And then once the pandemic hit, I got slapped in the face with burnout and got burnt to a crisp and really decided at that point that I could not do it any further. How I got into psychiatry was that one of my friends that I met in PA school, she worked in psychiatry and she said, "Hey, have you thought about psych as a specialty?" And I was thinking of maybe derm or some other roles out there too. And I reflected back to my rotations. I had an inpatient psych rotation, not an outpatient rotation. And I always thought that if I went into psych, maybe I could do inpatient, but I didn't think that I would really enjoy outpatient for some reason. And I asked her more about it. I asked her what she thought of it, what she liked about it. But what was also interesting was that she had been in 4 specialties by that point. So she had experienced family medicine herself, cardiology, allergy, and psych. And I
Mm.
asked her specifically what her burnout levels were on a scale of 1 to 10 in all those specialties. And of course, family medicine was really high, but psych was really low. And she also did enjoy allergy. So allergy and psych were both really low burnout levels for her. And I was like, okay, well, I trust her. I know what she's like. We're very similar. And if she enjoys it, then I can try it and see how things go. So I started through this large outpatient psychiatry rotation that has several locations throughout our state, but now also in other states surrounding us. And it was a really great first job in outpatient psychiatry because the team was a great supportive training and learning environment. My supervising physician at the time, he was also the medical director, and he would host these small group PA meetings remotely. We would do virtual meetings because it was during the pandemic and because we were at different locations every week. So we would call them case consults and we would meet with him every week, talk through our cases, talk through our questions. But he was always available through email, or I could catch him in the hallway because he did work down in the same building as me, down a few offices too. So I really appreciate that he was very PA friendly and almost, I felt like that role was almost like a residency or a fellowship in psychiatry, even though it absolutely was not. It was a true job. But I do feel like my time in family medicine really helped me too, because not only do you see a lot of psychiatry in family medicine, but it helps keep your differentials broad because there are a lot of different medical things that can present like psychiatric things as well. So I learned to like psych in that role. I was doing telepsych, and because it was during the pandemic, most of our patients were being seen remotely, but about 10 to 20% of them were still coming in person, and I was seeing them in person as well. And I decided I wanted to try to find a telepsych role where I could work remotely. And unfortunately, that was not being accommodated in that role. So I found this other role that I've been in now for almost 3 years, which is crazy to think about. And it is a small private practice integrated mental health clinic where we have therapists, we have a dietitian, we have occupational therapists, we have acupuncture. So it's mental health focused, but it's more holistic, more whole body type of mental health care, which I really appreciate.
That's very cool. I didn't realize that you were so burnt out as well. As you know, I do a lot of work with burnout, including this whole course that I just created. So it's funny that we were both burnt out at the same time too, like right before the pandemic. And
Right.
um yeah, when did you start your career? 5 years before that?
I was I started my first role as a PA in 2014 when I
Okay.
graduated.
So yeah, I started in 2012. I find that a lot of PAs I talk to do start to feel that burnout around like 5 to 7 year mark. I
Sure.
think it's
Yeah,
common.
I can imagine
Um,
that.
yeah. So I really like how your supervising physician did these conferences with you because especially in a field like psych where I feel like there's a lot to learn, a lot that could potentially go wrong. I don't know. I'm just assuming like you want that guidance in the beginning, and I'm really glad he gave it to you in that way. That sounds like it was a perfect place to start your psych career, and it sounds like what you're doing now is really great for like work life balance, and you're able to do telepsych and that sounds ideal, actually. You're talking about it, and I'm like, could I go into psych? I don't
You
know.
could.
Interesting. But just a logistical question. You
Yeah,
have to be still to do telehealth. Like when I was doing telehealth appointments, I had to be in New York because that's where my license was. Is that how it works for telehealth still in Minnesota?
great question. So it's actually that you have to be licensed in the state where your patients are located, which
Huh.
means my patients have to be in Minnesota, but I don't necessarily have to be in Minnesota. And
Oh.
that's very likely true in New York too. I do believe that
Hmm.
that's the national guidelines right now, but you can
Okay.
definitely check with your state PA organizations. Even if you're not a member of your state PA societies or organizations, they often will still help you with answering questions, point you to resources, help you even interpret the statutes, because if you ever take the time to try to read those, it can be very wordy and lengthy and things like that too. But that is the general rule with virtual medicine and telemedicine. There are actually many PAs that I'm aware of that see patients in many states because they are credentialed in those states, but they will just live in their home state and see patients in a few other states because they chose to get credentialed in those other states as well.
Right. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
gives some actual flexibility. Very cool. I'm really interested in what you do, but we will move on. I do want to ask, like, are there any roadblocks that you've ever faced as a PA? Like, whether it's maybe that was even getting into PA school or as a PA, did you have any issues where you had to like work with a difficult physician or just anything that maybe you found was a little difficult and you want to like explain to others, I guess, how you got around that?
Sure. I will say that I do feel very fortunate in that the physicians that I've worked with over the years have been really helpful. They've definitely been more mentoring type of roles than a lot of other stories I've heard from people out there.
Hmm.
So the physicians I've worked with have been really great. Lots of great team members overall, too, over the years. I will say that some of the roadblocks or things that have been challenging, one is imposter syndrome, especially as a new grad. I started my career at age 24. And at that time, I was starting family medicine. So I was not only seeing some walk in, more acute type of things, but I was becoming the PCP for my patients and growing a panel under me, and those patients were a lot older than me. So that was definitely something where it was like, oh, wow, I have to care for them and be their main person on their care team
Yeah.
as the primary care provider. That felt pretty heavy and felt like a lot of responsibility at the time too. Again, I certainly did it, and with the help and support of my colleagues as well. Other roadblocks, I would say too, would be things like insurance. Insurance companies can be quite the headache, to say the least, at times. And to say it nicely, we talk about Minnesota nice, right? So we say things nicely, but such lovely headaches where we have to do prior auths on things that are absolutely ridiculous, or repeat a prior auth every single year for the same medication or things like that. And in my current role, I'm an independent contractor. I'm a 1099 worker. So that means that I don't actually have the support of a lot of other medical staff. So in my previous psychiatry role, we had nurses that not only helped with different care hands-on, but they also helped with the prior auth too. In this role, I
Mhm.
do my own prior auth. So I get to see all of the craziness that goes into it and try to talk to pharmacy staff and see if they have insight or things like that as well. And then specifically for psychiatry too, sometimes they'll not prefer a certain antipsychotic medication or even other categories of meds over others. And then you have to try to transition or switch medications. And that's not ideal for psychiatry if someone's stable on a medication, right? I will
Yeah.
say that that's not quite as common. A lot of insurance companies will say, oh, okay, they're already on it, they're stable. We'll go ahead and cover that med, but you still have to jump through the hoops of the prior auth, which again is a giant waste of time, truthfully. And then also, I would say, although my physicians, supervising physicians, collaborating physicians over the years have been really great, really helpful, awesome to work with, just simply the need to have a physician can be challenging, especially in the field of psychiatry, because there are so few psychiatrists in our state in particular. And I'm sure I can only imagine that Minnesota is not a very rural or very underserved state. We're in the Midwest and not a lot of people like to come here for winters, but there are definitely a lot more rural states out there. So I can only imagine that if we have a hard time finding psychiatrists to collaborate with and be our supervising physician or collaborating physician, that other states can only have those challenges too. So although I'm not advocating that we don't need to have that relationship with a physician, I'm just saying that it is challenging to find that and
Right.
challenging to maintain that sometimes over the years too.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I was hinting at in the beginning was the insurance stuff too. So I'm glad you went through that or you went over that because, this whole prior authorization stuff and peer to peers and appeals and all of that is just so draining and it's so unnecessary most of the time. So I'm really glad you brought that up because I think in psych could be where it is one of the most dangerous places to have to do that because you have patients who often run out of their meds and I've experienced it with patients myself. Even though I'm an ortho, just like understanding what they go through and they run out and then the insurance company says no and now all of a sudden they've gone 5 days without their mood stabilizer and then it's bad, like bad things can
Yeah,
happen.
for sure.
Just like if you were denied, your blood pressure medication and you really, really needed your blood pressure medication. But it's just crazy how insurance companies control so much of what we do.
Yeah.
And in this sabbatical that I've been on for 10 months, and I learn a lot about healthcare in other countries. And let me tell you, when I explain this to healthcare workers in other countries, their jaws are on the floor. Like, first of all, they don't know that this goes on. Second, they literally cannot comprehend it. And they shouldn't be able to comprehend it because what we go through in the US is so ethically wrong when it comes to this. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I am sorry you have to go through that. I had to go through it too with ortho. But I don't know if you've been seeing on social media, there's actually like a big trend happening right now
Yeah.
where doctors and PAs and MPs are filming themselves doing prior auths. And I want this to keep happening because number one, unfortunately, a lot of the US has lost trust in us as a healthcare team. And that's sad because we really do just want to help people, like 99% of us, I'd say. And so For the public to understand what we go through for our patients because of insurance companies, I think is so important. And I'm just glad people are getting it out there, and I'm glad we're talking about it on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on where there can be delay with medications, and certainly with not only mental health meds, but other meds like blood pressure meds or things like that too. If the delay is too long, some of those meds you have to start all the way over and
Yeah,
titrate up slowly over time.
yeah,
And again, for blood pressure, their blood pressure could skyrocket, but for mental health, they could decompensate and their mood might get way worse or their anxiety might flare. And it's just absolutely not ideal. So it's incredibly frustrating and frustrating that insurance companies and people who don't have medical degrees or trained in medicine a day in their life
yeah.
are dictating how we care for our patients. And it's just not right. And I've seen some of those videos that you mentioned. I've seen a breast surgeon try to do peer to peers, and I've seen a lot of those providers share about how it really is just eating up our time and our energy and our bandwidth and probably contributing to our burnout overall.
Yeah, I think you might be referring to Dr. Potter. She kind of started the
Yep,
whole thing. Oh my gosh, she's been through it, let's just say. And she
yeah,
is not giving up. And I credit her for this trend and for this, hopefully whatever change comes from this, because something needs to change.
for sure. Exactly. One tip that I learned, you might have done this on some of your peer to peers when I was in family medicine. The physicians taught me to ask them, "Oh, so what was your name again? I didn't quite catch that. And how do you spell
Mhm.
that?" And ask those questions because okay, I'm going to document that you're denying this, and put it in the patient's chart. And really quickly, I have experience where they say, "Oh, well, let me pass you on to my manager, my supervisor," and all of a sudden it will get covered. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever tried strategies like that, but sometimes
Yeah.
there's little tricks or techniques that can help.
Yeah, yeah, I remember having to go through that. I will say I got pretty good at like getting things approved. Like not by like in any way where I was like being not untruthful, but like just knowing what information to pick from the chart. But why do we
Sure.
even have to play that game?
Right?
It's
It's a
just so
giant game.
crazy. And even I remember a time in ortho where they didn't want to approve a surgery, and was having a really hard time with this doctor that I was doing the peer to peer with. And my boss heard the call, and he like came over to the phone, and he was like, "Sir, are you an orthopedic surgeon?" And the guy was like, "I don't see how that matters." And I'm like, "It
Oh my
matters
goodness.
completely." So then it was
What?
like, so it was like a ophthalmologist or something, and he had no knowledge of the data. And like, I understand they're not totally the bad guy, right? Like, they work for this company that's pushing them to deny. But when you have people who just don't have the knowledge, or they're not paying attention to actual data, like, that's a
Yeah,
problem. That's a problem. But anyway,
exactly.
we went off on a big tangent there.
We
But
digress.
we digress. It was an important tangent though. All right, so we talked about, you already mentioned how you experienced burnout before the pandemic, and then you made a career move, and it seems to have helped. But tell me what the burnout felt like for you, because it's different for everybody. So what were you experiencing? Like, what signs and symptoms?
I definitely had the absolute emotional exhaustion. Even though during the pandemic, my hours got cut, and my pay got cut because of that as well, I was still just so tired and so drained, even though I was doing less work. That was
Yeah.
a huge symptom that I had. Then I was also becoming definitely more cynical for sure. I was just cynical about the system, the organization, how they, again, cut our hours and everything and cut our pay when we're trying to serve in this global pandemic and things like that too. But to keep things afloat, it sounds like that's what they literally had to do as a business move, but it still felt personal, right? And then just cynicism towards my patients, towards my staff, things like that too, even frustrations more so at home. So I was just all around getting pretty crabby, truthfully. That was a huge part of it. And again, it went back to thinking, how in the world am I going to do this until my 60s? I absolutely did not think that I could. And I tried to envision myself doing that and realized it wasn't sustainable. So what helped was transferring specialties for sure. Some PAs can work in family medicine for many years and it's sustainable for them and they can do it, and more power to them. Good for them. We need them out there. It just was not something I could do because I absolutely love to be a thorough person. And I also love to be efficient and stay on time, not only out of respect for myself, but also all the patients scheduled later in the day too. I didn't like to run behind. And those two things just definitely clash in family medicine. So transitioning specialties help, but then I also cut back on my hours. With that first transition from family med to outpatient psychiatry, cut back a little bit on hours. And then this last transition over to this fully telepsych role, I cut back to working only 3 days per week clinically, which I do believe working part-time can help make working in medicine a little bit more sustainable for a lot of people. Again, it depends on the person and the situation. But I want to emphasize that all of this was possible only because I eventually got my student loan debt paid off. I paid off roughly 126,000 was what my starting number was. Don't even know the interest. I don't even want to know the interest amount over the years. Pay that off in about 9 years of practicing. And I was also investing aggressively too in my earlier in my career and throughout as well. So paying off my student loan debt, investing aggressively has now allowed myself and my husband to reach the point of what's called coast-fi or coast financial independence, which means that if we don't invest another dollar, we still would have enough to retire at traditional retirement age, which is really cool. So we still want to have the option to retire early. So we're still wanting to invest and things like that over the years. But it was just, I was able to cut back to part-time because of that, because
Mhm.
my giant student loan debt was paid off, and it allowed us to get our budget under control, fight the urge to keep up with the Joneses and all those things over the years too, and really learn to spend our money intentionally. And that's what's really helped as well.
That's great. That's so nice. I've never heard that coast financial independence. So that makes so much sense and it sounds great. Have you ever considered taking a sabbatical?
Absolutely. I have. I am not in a place that I want to do that quite yet, but I could absolutely consider that for the future. And we don't have kiddos yet, but thinking about maybe a really long maternity leave or something like that, that
Yeah.
ends up essentially being a sabbatical down the road. Or I absolutely love my role currently, but if I were to switch roles in the future between switching roles, ideal time, or if I experience extreme burnout again down the road, would absolutely consider taking a sabbatical.
Cool. Highly recommend it.
Hey, healthcare pros, are you feeling stuck in burnout? I put together a free sabbatical starter guide that gives you the first steps to plan, budget, and take time off without derailing your career. It's the roadmap I wish I had sooner. Download it free today. Just click the link in the show notes and start your healing journey.
So I guess let's segue then into your business because it sounds like you got your finances together. You know, I think you said it took about 5 years before you really started thinking about it. Is that right? 5 years into your career?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've done some great things, and now you teach other PAs how to get control of their finances and gain financial independence. So, what helped you in the first place? Like, was there somebody else guiding you? Did you kind of figure this all out on your own? And then, what inspired you to start helping other people to gain financial independence as well?
Yeah, definitely. So, dialing back to being a brand new grad, my husband and I started working with someone who's a financial advisor. And I put that in quotes because unfortunately, he was not a great financial professional and gave us
Okay.
really poor
Oh
advice
no.
right at the beginning of our right at the beginning of my PA career. I had a rotation with a PA who recommended him, and I thought, yeah, I would absolutely love to work with a financial professional because I wanted to pay off my student loan debt aggressively, learn more about finances because unfortunately I did not have financial education growing up in high school, undergrad with my parents. I just was pretty naive when it came to finances. And unfortunately, he gave us poor advice like get this expensive whole life insurance and invest your money through there. But really, that was a lot of commission for him as a salesperson.
Mhm.
And he didn't tell me to, max out my 401k, open a Roth IRA, look into an HSA, see if that would be something that we could do as well. And it was just not great advice. And honestly, told me to not be in a rush to pay off my student loan debt. But I wanted to pay it off quickly, but I listened to him and delayed it, truthfully, and was only doing minimum payments for several years. So I definitely could have gotten it paid off way less than 9 years for sure if we had not followed that advice initially. Well, how I learned about financial independence was through the husband of a PA friend. We were all riding together to another PA's wedding, and he was talking about travel hacking and about using credit cards for travel rewards, which I know you love to do as well, Leigha. So shout out for all the travel hackers out there. And he pointed me to a resource to listen and learn about travel hacking that was actually the Choose FI podcast. So it was one of the earlier episodes that they did, and Choose FI is an amazing financial independence podcast. And I was listening to this, and then I started listening to more episodes, and I was like, what is this financial independence thing they're talking about? And that's when I learned about the concept of financial independence. And what it is, just briefly for those who may not know, it is the point that you have invested your funds, invested your money, or have assets, whether it's paying you, such as real estate investing, where you have payment coming in, or investments through the stock market or your investment accounts overall. It's the point where you have enough in there and enough income from those that you don't have to work anymore. And that is generally considered 25 times your annual expenses, your expected annual expenses at that point, and they need to be inflation adjusted and things like that too. But it's the point where you no longer have to work for money. And I thought, okay, well, this is cool. This is interesting. And I learned more about it and realized it really gave me hope that I don't have to work until age 60 or 65 if I don't want to, because the point of retirement is truly a number. It's truly a number of your finances. It's not an age number. It doesn't matter how old you are when you can retire. It matters what your financial situation is like. So I realized at the time that there weren't really PAs talking about all this. There were some physicians talking about it. There's the White Coat Investor. He's a really great resource out there. But I wasn't familiar with other PAs talking about it. So I decided to launch my podcast and my website. I started blogging a bit. And the purpose of it was to educate PAs that this is doable. For me, it helped with treating and preventing my burnout and gave me options. And that financial literacy really is essential so that you understand your money, because no one cares more about your finances more than you do. No one cares more about them. So it's really important that you understand the different options out there and understand how to invest or how to pay off debt and those types of things to build your wealth for the future.
So important. And you're speaking to a person who wishes she had this 10 years ago, because it really is crazy how we don't, not only in like grammar school or in high school, like we don't get any financial education. And then we go through PA school and we learn so much in a short period of time. But I don't know anyone who has like a finance class or even, like a billing and coding class, anything that has to do with money and healthcare, right? So I think it's super important what you're doing. And it's really amazing how you've turn your finances around with the help of, a few people, but it sounds like you really kind of took charge on your own, even after getting bad advice. And yeah, I like what you're doing for PAs and healthcare professionals. And I think that so many of us are leaving a lot of money on the table, which I've realized over the years. And thanks to people like you, we can learn to be better with our money. And it's never too late. So we'll definitely talk about where everyone can find you towards the end of the episode. So what piece of advice, if there is one piece or two pieces, would you give to PAs or healthcare professionals when it comes to their finances? Maybe something that they can get started with right away, if that exists.
Yeah, absolutely great question for sure. I first want to point out and empower the listeners out there that if you can become a PA or other medical professional, you absolutely can learn about finances. You can become financially literate, learn the basics, and get control of your money, because it really is not that hard. Even though it might not seem interesting or might seem way overwhelming for you initially, or you might feel like you don't have a lot of time, there are a lot of different ways that you can learn easily, whether it's through books or podcasts, YouTube, courses, etc. There's lots of different options out there, coaching as well. But the first step that I would encourage you to do, if you have no idea where your finances are, is that you need to actually take the time to look and assess where you're at currently. Figure out what all of your debt is. Is it credit card debt, car loan debt, student loan debt, etc., mortgage, all those things. And then also figure out what your assets are. What types of investments do you have? You very likely have been getting an employer match, perhaps, at a lot of your medical roles. Do you know how much you have in there? And then I want you to really take ownership of that information, because if you don't know where you're at currently, you have no idea where you're going to end up. So you need to first assess where you're at and then just start making small changes that really compound over time. You can make little changes like figuring out which subscriptions you never use and go ahead and cancel those. That's a simple step. You can figure out, hey, do I really want to drive this expensive car, or am I fine with a car that's not so expensive and still takes me from A to B in comfort, right? That's okay to do as well. So figuring out those little areas that you can make changes. And I am not a huge giant budget person, meaning track every single dollar for the rest of your life. I don't love that concept because a lot of people don't care for that, and it can take a lot of time and energy for them. So I do encourage you to track every dollar, though, for at least a month, but ideally 3 months. Figuring out exactly where your money is going for those 3 months can really be eye-opening for you. And then figuring out your top 3 budget items are usually housing, transportation, and food and beverages, and figuring out which of those areas you can cut costs on. You mentioned, Leigha, on my show that you moved from Manhattan to Queens, and that helped save a lot with your cost. And so figure out where you can make those little changes in your life, and then always have grace and patience with yourself, because it very likely took you many years and many decades to create your habits, your spending habits, but also your beliefs about money. And those beliefs generally start in childhood. You learned much of your money beliefs and habits from your parents as well. So understanding that this change, this transition is usually not overnight, but if you are dedicated and motivated, then you can absolutely do it.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like great advice. I know it's great advice, and I think that it's so important to give yourself grace, like you said, because I think as healthcare workers, we tend to be hard on ourselves. And for me, I don't want to speak for other people, but for me, I'm kind of the person where I'm like, well, I already kind of like ruined this part of my finances. Like, that's done. Like, I can't come back from that. And then I get in my head about it. But really, you can, and you can make a change, and you can make little changes, even if you just start, like you said, with the one thing, like canceling subscriptions, right? That's one simple step. And then you start figuring that out, and then you go to the next step and try to like take little pieces at a time, whether rather than thinking about this huge big picture, like, oh my God, how am I going to pay off $260,000 of debt? Like, you can't think about it that way. In my opinion, it has to be like, for me, I'll get too overwhelmed, right? So I like
Yeah.
what you said about just taking little steps. And also, I agree. If we can make it through PA school and like learn all that information and pass the pants and all of that, like, we can learn about finances. So,
Yes, one of the goals of my podcast is to really empower the listeners to do that, where they can absolutely take control of their finances and learn about it in bite-sized pieces for information over time too. So I just want to really be encouraging and motivating to all the listeners out there that you absolutely can do it.
awesome. I love that. Now, I just want to circle back to being a PA real quick. Do you have any regrets about becoming a PA?
Great question. I don't have regrets about the PA profession that I chose for my life, but I do wish that I learned a little bit more about some other healthcare professions that I just wasn't super familiar with or even think about over the years that I may have actually liked. For example, CRNAs, I wasn't familiar with those as an option, that career path as well. And even though I've worn glasses my whole life, I never really considered optometry or things like that too. I thought maybe I would get a little bored looking at eyeballs all the time, but maybe I would have liked that as well. You get a little bit of the technical part of science and medicine with that as well. So
Yeah.
there are definitely some other healthcare careers that I wish I learned a little bit more about, but I really love the PA profession, truthfully. Now, do I believe I'm going to work fully into traditional retirement age in the PA profession? Maybe not. I could definitely see myself either retiring early. That's a goal that I have the option for. But retiring early also doesn't mean just sitting around doing nothing, right? So what does that look like for me? I'm trying to figure that out, right? It's cultivating these other hobbies, these other business endeavors, these other things that I enjoy doing on the side. Similarly to you, I absolutely love traveling. So that's certainly a goal that we'll continue to cultivate over the years too. And figuring out what type of content creation and education as well over the years for others, and maybe other types of endeavors. But I really enjoy the PA profession, at least so far in my life. I've been a PA now for 11 years and I've really liked it so far.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you're saying that you wish you learn about other careers that you love being PA. But part of the reason why I started this podcast was exactly for that reason. I interview people from all aspects of medicine. So if you are listening to this and you're not sure what you want to do, definitely take a listen to the rest of my episodes because I do have a CRNA on there. I have nurses, doctors. I have all different types of PAs. I think I will be interviewing a radiology tech soon. So yeah, like there's so many options in healthcare. I do like that you said that because back when we, I guess, were in school, I only knew the pre-med path, right? I was going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my mom actually found out what a PA was and like explained it to me that I started thinking, oh, there's another option here. So even then, for me, it was either doctor or PA, but there really were like
Yeah.
so many other options. So it's great that you brought that up. What would you recommend for a person or a current PA student, maybe who's considering going into psychiatry? Do you have any pieces of advices for that person? Maybe tell me who should and should not go into the field of psych.
Sure. Great question. As far as I'm aware, all PA programs still require a psychiatry rotation. That's generally standard, and that might look like inpatient psych or outpatient psych. I have even heard, because sometimes it's hard to get rotations, that sometimes it's having a rotation alongside a therapist as well. You might not even be alongside a PA or an NP or a physician too. But what I encourage is, if you have the interest in psychiatry and mental health, maybe that's because of people that you know in your life, or maybe you have experienced mental health things over the years. And honestly, so many people have, right? If you have that little bit of interest, to figure out during the rotation, do you like this or not? And if you don't like it, even consider trying to get another rotation or potentially shadowing for the future, or considering the opportunity of the other sides of psychiatry. So maybe you didn't love inpatient, but you would like outpatient, or vice versa as well. So I encourage you to have an open mind and to think about if you might like that type of career, that type of specialty as well. You asked about what are some things to think about for psychiatry. There are some really great resources out there. There's NEI Institute. NEI Institute is kind of like the up to date for psychiatry, I like to explain it as. And then Stahl's Psychopharmacology. Stahl's is a psychiatrist that has lots of great resources out there. And if you get an NEI membership, you get access to the digital copy of the Stahl's resources as well. So there's lots of really great psych-specific resources out there that you can join one of the Psychiatry PA groups on Facebook. There's lots of those. There's a couple main ones there as well, and we're happy to share those resources if you have questions about that. And then you asked, who would I recommend considering not going into psychiatry? And the first type of person I would encourage you probably psychiatry is not a great fit is if you're not a patient person. So working in healthcare, most of us are very patient, but some of us are a little bit more patient than others, right? If you like to hurry up, get to the diagnosis and treat and treat the patient, for example, urgent care, ER, those types of fields, then maybe psychiatry is not the best fit for you, although you still will definitely see lots of psychiatry within those fields, but you won't have that long-term care, that long-term managing of their symptoms and their medications as well. And then also if you're not very empathetic, because in psychiatry, unfortunately, we hear about lots of trauma, lots of people have PTSD, in addition to a lot of other mental health conditions as well. And it really can be nice if you have the empathy and can take the time to be with the patient and express that empathy, because it shows them that you're caring and that although you can't imagine necessarily going through that trauma, that at least that they have a listening and a caring ear to share that information with. And that leads me to the next one too. I would encourage that you be a good listener. If you, again, just like to be really quick, straight to the point, then psychiatry might not be the best field for you because you're often nurturing your relationship with the patient over a period of time. You might not have all the information right at that first visit. So it's important that they learn to trust you so that they can share the information, share their symptoms, share their past experience with their mental health over the years, and that you can help treat them appropriately. And then finally, the last type of person that probably wouldn't like psychiatry is someone who absolutely loves procedures or loves using their medical equipment, because I have not used a stethoscope or an otoscope for a hot minute. And I used to always think I'd be in dermatology because I actually loved procedures in PA school. But honestly, I am really enjoying this telepsych role that I'm in, even though there is no hand-on care and there are no procedures in it overall.
Great answers to that complicated question that I asked you. But this is the whole point of this podcast really is to give people an honest review of what we do. Because when I started this, I just kept seeing podcasts out there that were like, my job's so great. I love being a PA. Everything's great. It's the best job ever. But it is. It's an amazing job. But it doesn't come without challenges. And so I think it's really important to be honest about what we do and help guide people to go in the right direction. I will also say that if you are in med school or PA school and you have a psych rotation coming up, don't write it off, because I was like dreading my psych rotation and it actually ended up being one of my favorite rotations. So you never know like what's going to come of it. I actually was I think it was lucky. I was lucky enough to work in a detox center for my psych rotation.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the way my school worked was they really just placed you. You didn't really have a choice for your rotations. And most of my class got put in like inpatient psych. And there were like 4 of us who got put in this detox center. And honestly, like I learned so much on this rotation. I learned so much about addiction. I learned how broken the system is, meaning like, unfortunately, when people come for help, there's actually like nowhere for them to go afterwards. Like that's a whole issue we could get into on a whole other podcast. But I ended up really like connecting with my patients and I really liked it a lot. And so, yeah, don't write off psych. I think we need a lot more PAs in psych. And it sounds like there's a whole, I don't want to say market, but kind of like a gap in healthcare for this. So maybe, if you're having trouble deciding what you want to do, look into this a little more. And definitely I would encourage people to listen to your podcast, Kat, because even though it's about finance, like mostly I think they'll gain a lot of insight to what you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about burnout, finances. I have an episode about telemedicine as well.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not only about money, but money plays a role in most of our things that we encounter day to day as well.
So true. So the last thing I want to ask you is, what do you want to see from the PA profession as a whole, or even healthcare in the next 5 years? I know there's a lot going on right now with our profession and, the ability to practice more independently. So where do you want to see our profession going in the next 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that as few barriers as possible is nice. I have advocated on our state PA Day on the Hill, where we talk to our legislators over the past few years. And it's always really nice to meet with them and share a little bit more about our PA profession and try to advocate for what our state is doing for PAs and what changes we're trying to make to lower the barriers so that we can continue to practice good medicine for our patients as well. So certainly that. But the other things that I have with this question would be that I definitely want more PAs to become financially literate, in case that's not obvious, because that helps give them the option to retire early or open up many more options throughout their career, such as working part-time. If you are a little bit newer to finances or financial independence, in the show notes, there will be a link for my beginner's workbook that teaches PAs and other healthcare professionals about financial independence. So it's a free download. You can check that out if you're interested. It helps guide you through some of those basic steps that you can do initially as well. I also would love to see if insurance companies would back down and let medical providers practice medicine instead of dictating to us how we practice, but also same with administrators. So the administration of large organizations or hospitals, they can be very overbearing or have particular things that they need met, but it's just not doable or sustainable. We can't keep piling on more and more work and do way more work in the same amount of time, right? It's just not feasible and doable. I also would love to see if medical insurance companies and also healthcare organizations would reimburse PAs fairly for their work and compensate PAs well. I'm not saying that we should make exactly what physicians make, but in many specialties, the roles are very, very similar, if not the exact same. So it's just frustrating to see that PAs do the exact same work for a fraction of the pay. And that's been the case with family medicine and psychiatry. Certainly, it depends on your role and your specialty as well. But I would also love to see that PAs and other medical providers learn to actually holistically care for themselves in all aspects of health. So don't let that burnout fester and make sure that you're not only taking care of your physical health, making sure that you're getting good sleep, good nutrition, movement, all those things, right? But also prioritizing your mental health, recognizing when you need to take a pause when needed. Also, social health is really important, having the community, friends and family, meeting people throughout the world if you're going on sabbatical or traveling a lot, but also financial health. It's important that your financial health is good and in order to be able to help sustain those other areas of health too. All those different types of health intersect and interplay with each other. So it's really important that you don't neglect any areas of health and not only focus on the physical health that we're all trained to do working in medicine.
What a perfect answer. I have no notes. I love everything you
Thanks,
said.
Leigha.
Amazing. So it's so important, the whole holistic everything, taking care of yourself. Like, obviously, that's what I push so much. I definitely want to see insurance companies back down. Like you said, the administration, it's just yesterday, I was having a conversation with a PA who at her hospital, they're like now forcing surgeons to do a certain amount of cases or they can't have a PA or they can't have a second PA. And I'm just like, this is where it goes wrong. And this is where the care goes down to make more money. And I just feel like it's going to blow up one day and we can't keep growing this bubble. Right. So yeah, all of the things that you said were just, you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. Well, Kat, thank you so much for being on my show. And this podcast swap was great. I'm excited to listen to your episode too. Where can my listeners find you? On social media or your website? Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on your show, Leigha, as well. It's been a wonderful conversation. And the listeners can definitely check out our swap over on my show. It's called PA the FI way. FI stands for financial independence. So I have that little bit finance nerd in the title of my podcast. My website's pathefiway.com, Instagram at pathefiway, and then LinkedIn is my name. I'll include that link in the show notes for Leigha to add as well, that she can add. And you're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I also do some coaching too. If you feel as though there's any type of certain financial topic that you're interested in tackling and you would like that mentorship, that support, you can email me at pathefiway@gmail.com or send me a message through one of the socials as well. Happy to connect there.
Awesome. Yes, I will put all of Kat's links in the show notes for this episode, and definitely reach out to her if you're interested in getting your finances together. I highly recommend it. It'll give you a lot more freedom to do all the things you want, maybe even travel the world one day. But again, thank you so much.
Sure.
This has been really nice, and hopefully we'll meet one day in person. Until then, I'll see you on your social medias and keep paying attention to all the great things that you're doing.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Leigha.
This is the So You Want to Work in Healthcare podcast with new episodes every month. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest releases.